Good afternoon, evening, good morning, wherever you are. I am Supermassive, and this is the Defiant NFT show. As you can tell, I have a companion with me today. Hello, who are you? Well, this is a VTuber version of me. This is an anime version of myself that I have put together to kind of demo how you can actually create a very simple kind of VTuber setup. And I've been playing around with Unreal Engine, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong. But this is VC Face. This is the version of myself that I kind of knocked up. It took me like 20 minutes today to knock this up. What is happening at the moment is OBS is looking at the camera that's going into it directly. VC Face is picking that up, listening to the microphone, and in real time, just tracking me. It's a very low payload on the computer. It's a very simple setup. It took me, like I said, about 20 minutes to build this thing. You don't build it in VC Face, but you can do the calibration in VC Face. So there's a bunch of parameters that you can set here. There's also things you can do like changing the effect settings. So I could add, here's a fun one. If you can add bloom. So I got a kind of weird glow going on. We can whack up the intensity. Ooh, that's insane. You got to remember this is manga. VTubers on the whole tend to lean towards manga. It just seems to work really well for that mindset. It's gamers and everything else. And that's kind of what I wanted to jump in, because as much as the Unreal Engine stuff we've been doing is fun, it takes us like 6 hours to set it up and get it working to a degree where we feel confident enough to go live. This took me no time at all. And I think the entry point for most people coming in and being VTubers is going to be this, which is why I wanted to check it out and have a look. We've got some bloom settings, so let's turn those off. Ambient occlusion, that's basically fake shadows. We've got some lens distortion effects. We've got some chromatic aberration. This is kind of fun. So you get this kind of weird blurring and separation of the RGB channels there. If you've done any kind of 3D graphics or anything else, like a tiny little bit of chromatic aberration lends this air of realism to your shots, because it's basically saying when light travels through glass, odd stuff happens and the RGB channels get separated, and it creates this very subtle effect where things just feel a little bit more embedded in the real world. I mean, it's subtle and you can whack it up. So it's like this, and it's kind of fun. That's interesting. You've got some color effects here as well. So you can warm it up and cool it down, although we're not seeing. Let's turn that on. There we go. We can warm it up and cool it down. That's all fine. Grain, you can add some grain effects. This is a little bit intense for my liking, but we can switch it down. I'm not sure how much web compression will allow you to see all of that, but we can also look at the halftone. I love the halftone. Look at that. That is fun. That's genuinely fun, seeing kind of halftone effects. And you can whack up the black level, so you go like full, what was the Elijah Wood's character in Sin City? It's kind of like this. Hey, I'm talking to you from beyond. I'm talking to you from beyond, and this is going to be the most exciting NFT live stream you've ever seen. You get me? Something like that, anyway. As you can tell, I have a new live stream set up today. We were experimenting with some different things. I've actually got a mix cast from Tascam, which is it's just the business, which has enabled me to route audio, to have sound effects through the Stream Deck. It's just so much easier. Basically that. The whole goal of this is to make the live streaming setup really immersive and fun. So let me dig a little deeper, one layer deeper, in fact, to show you how we set this up with, I'll tell you what, I'm going to just switch off all the UI. There we go. So let me show you how we set this up with VRoid Studio, because that's really where the magic happens. This is VRoid Studio. These are not 2D avatars. These are actually 3D avatars. And basically what you can do is you can go back. Let's go back to the basic model selection. So you have these models, and let's look at avatar sample C, for instance. This takes a little bit of time to load in, but it's pretty immediate. What you can do here is then basically change the face type. Let's just zoom in a little bit. There you go. Or there's different face settings. We can also change, there's so many parameters here. We can change the gaze distance, bring it in closer, or the eyebrows position, going up and down, up and down. You have quite a lot of control, but it's really fast and really immediate. If you've ever played around with metahumans, we tend to be a little bit, it's quite a lot of work to get a metahuman to do what you want. But these mangas they're kind of fun. And it took me almost no time at all to get the result that I wanted, which is what's actually live streaming with me now. And then to get that set up with OBS, very, very easy. The key thing to remember here is that every single piece of software that I've used and every single piece of software that I've demoed, free, completely free, which means that anybody that wants to get set up and start VTubing can very, very easily and very, very quickly. OBS is amazing, actually. It feels kind of crude and rudimentary, but trust me when I say it's really fantastic. And if you build it in with some other kind of more interesting pieces of hardware, like for instance, like a keytar, I don't know if you can even hear that, but it's there. Oh yeah. And some sound effects, you can start to build up a pretty impressive live streaming setup, and it really doesn't need to cost you that much. I'm constantly amazed by what's possible in this space. What I'm also amazed by is the fact that we have a guest. I'm going to add him to the stream now. We have Ross from Fan3 on the channel. Unmute yourself, Ross. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Welcome. I've just been demoing some. Well, is it nonsense? What do you make of VTubing?
I was enjoying it. Do you know, we are in not a similar place, but exploring some things at the moment, because we launched our community membership pass last week on Nifty Gateway, and we have our opening party in Crypto Voxels tomorrow. And 4 DJs and VJ sets. So we are exploring all sorts of ways of delivering different types of experiences through Crypto Voxels, and it's the first time we've done it, so it's totally experimental.
And it's hard as well with this stuff. Let's take a step back and introduce who you are and the project that you've put together, because I think it's what we're talking about on this stream is where this space is going. It's not just collect something and number go up. It's actually experiences and a bunch of other stuff. So where do you fit into all of this?
That's a very good question. So by way of introduction, I'm one of the co-founders of Fan3. There is 3 of us, conveniently for the name. We've been going just under a year. We set the business up really to bridge the gap between artists, creators, fan communities, and Web3 strategies. So we work with musicians, artists, creators, and we help them and guide them to activate their audiences in this wonderful new world. That can be in a whole host of ways, and excited to talk with you today about what's next and where that engagement could go, because over the lifetime of what we've been doing and the projects that we've been involved in, there have been so many innovations and changes. Our most recent project, which you can see at the top of our Twitter feed, was Inclusion, which dropped on Nifty Gateway last Tuesday, which was an 8-artist collaboration, really to put a positive message out into the space about the importance of equity and inclusion, and the fact that we need to build this space as a place where everybody can belong and feel safe. And I think that also needs to come into the conversation around what's next for NFTs and the NFT community, because I think without those values, technology built with inherent and systemic problems on top of it will create greater problems. So I think we just need to be thoughtful about what's next and how we kind of create and deliver things for the community. So that was our last project, and part of that project was a community membership pass, which, whilst was the first stepping stone for us as Fan3 to build our own membership community, it was also a platform to raise funds for a grant for emerging artists, which applications close for the first round of funding tomorrow, and also a mentor program. So we've got some amazing artists from across the space, through collectibles, crypto art, and Web3 musicians, to mentor and give their time to mentor emerging talent, which includes amazing artists like Blake Catherine, Euphoria, Malavida, Tom Yu, Bill Ellis, Web3 musicians like Latasha. We've got Liam Payne from One Direction giving his time as well, and some collectible communities on top of that. We've got Abby as an example from Top Dog Beach Club. So hopefully we can find a mentor who's at least been there and experienced some of the chaos and fun of the last year and can provide some guidance and advice to some new talent. So
Well,
that's
you've set
kind of
me
a
up.
summary and all in.
You set me up beautifully. There is a human on the channel with us, Sven, who also tweets beautifully about the journey that he has been on over the last year and a half. And I think you'd be the first to admit that you probably wouldn't have expected to be where you are now a year ago, Sven. Do you resonate with what Ross is saying here about Fan3 and the need to kind of educate and grow this space?
I mean, 100%. You know, first of all, I didn't even know I was going to be on with Ross today. This is great. Ross and I are
me neither, mate.
good
It's
friends.
so great
So
to
this
see
is,
you.
you know, pleasant surprise. You know, I think those of you who know me know that, you know, mentorship, educating others, you know, not just about the key issues like security and whatnot, but just how to get acclimated. I think people hear about NFTs, they want to come into the space. Where do you begin? Like, we have these built-in communities now because we've been around for a while, but it's really intimidating. I mean, you enter, if you're not on Twitter, if you're not in Discord, how do you navigate, you know, NFTs? So it's something that, you know, I've certainly tried to, you know, do through my projects, both Noobs and of course the Mad Pups. And, you know, I think what Fan3 is doing is really, really special. So yeah, I'm always happy to talk about this. And especially on a much better microphone. You know, the criticism was heard last week. And
but it wasn't just the criticism that was heard, it was the whistling kettle that was heard.
The whistling kettle, the drilling, New York City was heard. But no, this is really nice to be here with you guys.
Okay, so listen, we need to roll some music. Because this is a message from Sven. I've often heard OpenSea described as the Amazon of the blockchain, but ever since they announced their latest round of fundraising, I found myself thinking they may be less Amazon and more America Online. And if they're not careful, they may experience a similar fate. OpenSea is a marketplace, so the Amazon comparisons aren't entirely unfounded, but they're also a walled garden operating in an emerging decentralized world. Right now, they have a massive advantage due to wallet acquisition, but their customers are not captive to their platform. Sven, what's going on here? This tweet thread, we didn't talk about it last week. We should have done, and I'm sorry, but now you're here. Explain.
Well, first of all, I sound much better through your voice than I ever sound in my head. So that, you know, was special. I'm going to send you all my tweets from now on just to read back to me. You know, I don't want to bash OpenSea because they do a lot of good and they've done a lot to open up, you know, NFTs to the mainstream, you know, part of the market. But I think that there's a lot of warning signs, perhaps, that we should acknowledge, you know, that became quite evident through their handling of the listings exploit issue, which for those that are less familiar, you know, there's an issue where you had what people thought were inactive listings. If someone had transferred an NFT out of their wallet, they didn't realize, didn't cancel the listing. And so when an NFT got transferred back in, they were able to be sniped by bots. It became a much more serious issue when OpenSea sent out an advisory email to have people cancel these listings. But as soon as they sent the cancellation tokens, it actually made them, the transactions, it actually made them more easily identifiable. And so they made a bad situation worse. And it took them quite a bit of time to react to that. You know, OpenSea is known for a lot of things. Communication is not one of them, but communication is critical. You know, we were just talking about how you interact in NFTs. It's through Twitter, it's through Discord. And there was just kind of silence, and it not just silence, but it came off as tone deafness in that they don't necessarily understand what the community needs. And so what I was trying to point out was that OpenSea needs us a lot more than we need them. Now, do I think that OpenSea is going to disappear tomorrow? No, I don't. And OpenSea has the best opportunity relative to any other platform right now for success and to be the marketplace leader long term. You know, eBay, it's still around. It's still a dominant force. Amazon, of course, is still a dominant force. But there are also countless examples of these large tech companies that emerge early that don't succeed. And they don't succeed for a variety of reasons, but one of the key ones has to do with leadership, how you handle adversity. And this is not, again, I think what, you know, Alex and Devin did in creating OpenSea and the entire team there is incredible. I couldn't have done that. None of us, most of us have zero chance at ever building something as impressive as that. But how you then elevate, right, the platform as we grow. I mean, they've handled tremendous growth as well as you can in many ways. But I think the ways that they react to certain issues like this, how they communicate with the community is going to become increasingly more critical, because at some point, competitors will exist. Looks Rare is a true competitor. Now, people might not love everything about it. The interface is still not perfect, but it is providing a true viable challenger to OpenSea. Coinbase is around the corner. Nifty Gateway is providing more options with their wallet integration. And you might look at these and say, well, how do they ultimately compete with OpenSea? I don't know the answer to that yet, but more options are out there for the consumer. And if the consumer becomes increasingly dissatisfied with OpenSea, they will leave. They don't need OpenSea. Just like we didn't need AOL to access the internet. We were kind of convinced that for a while, and then it became apparent, actually, there's other ways around this. So, maybe it was a bit of a crude analogy, but it felt an appropriate one, because, it made for an interesting comparison, because OpenSea is not just a marketplace. They're kind of our gateway, right? It is OpenSea. They're kind of our gateway, our homepage for NFTs right now. And if that changes, right, the marketplace will still be there. But if they're not our first stop to look at, okay, where's this trading? Where do I go to buy this? If Coinbase comes in and there's 500,000 active wallets monthly on OpenSea. How many active wallets are on Coinbase? They could easily dwarf the user base of OpenSea in a very short period of time. And then OpenSea is no longer the homepage. So that was the point that I was trying to point out, bring to light. I'm glad you read it. Not a lot of people did. I can get 700 likes when I talk about selling an Azuki, and about 7 when I talk about more serious issues. But it's something that we should think about.
Well, we definitely should, because you're not wrong. There's been a series of instances where, for instance, CoinMarketCap just kind of sort of fell down a little bit, and CoinGecko took over. And in the DeFi space, DeFi Llama is now the trusted source for good DeFi data. Ross, there is an onboarding issue in this space, and there's an onboarding challenge in this space. And if people see an incumbent like this, but there are better options out there, how do we steer them towards those better options? And I'm kind of imagining that you see yourself as a better option in so many different ways as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think the onboarding into the space still has a long way to go, right? It's not ready for mass adoption yet, in my view. We work with artists and creators who have huge Web2 global audiences, and we are constantly wrestling with the appropriate strategy to bring those audiences into this space in a way that's as frictionless as possible. And MetaMask and a crypto wallet and everything that you need to do currently to trade on OpenSea is not frictionless, and it's not easy, and it can't be consumed by mass population. So there are huge businesses making real big strides in this. Of course, everything in the Dapper ecosystem on Flow, music NFT websites like the One Of, where the customer experience feels a lot more like iTunes, Netflix, typical Web2 experiences, where I think that is essential for mass adoption. And if we're going to increase, from 500,000 wallets active to kind of 10 million, we've got such a huge way to go that I think the whole onboarding experience has to change. Coinbase will be, of course, super interesting to see how that evolves. Because I think I read that there's something like 20 odd million customers on Coinbase from a crypto point of view. So, the percentage going into NFTs through that wallet transition can completely change the whole ecosystem. But I think the more that businesses are innovating or even bolting in products like MoonPay, where traditional consumer methods are able to purchase the NFT, I think that's got to be the key for us as a community. And when we work with, people who are high profile in other parts of the creative economy, whether that's musicians, athletes, actors, their audiences are not crypto native. And, we think about sort of fame and influence in our ecosystem, looking at some of the most celebrated people in our community who may have a couple of 100,000 followers. I pushed a Gary Vee, probably the biggest with 2 million Twitter followers. And then some of the people that we work with have got like 36 million, 40 million. And how do we bring these audiences into this space in a isn't you need to buy crypto, you need to get your MetaMask, you need to understand your wallets, and the other thing which we should probably discuss is the kind of not relentless, but it feels relentless, draining of people's wallets and security issues. It feels like every day I'm on Twitter and somebody is waking up having their wallet hacked, losing their rates, losing their dues, losing their world of women. And I think it only takes a few instances for the negative press to reach a Web2 native audience, as Gary Vee always talks about that risk of when you started putting your credit card online to buy things and some credit cards got hacked and suddenly no one wanted to put their credit card into the internet. And I think the more that there's that negative press, the more that we'll really struggle unless we can create a more frictionless onboarding into NFTs.
Well, I have the contrarian view on that, which is there's no such thing as bad press. And I genuinely believe that, because for every person that is turned off by this, there'll be someone else that kind of just goes, well, maybe I should take a look. And I certainly remember my own onboarding process, which is I completely ignored it. I remember going and doing some research on Bitcoin and finding myself on Silk Road. And Silk Road was this incredible thing where like you could not believe what it was and how you got there. You felt you were going down this rabbit hole into just this incredible underground journey into hell. And then there was this Bitcoin thing. And in order to send Bitcoin to Silk Road, you had to do quite a lot of very complicated steps, and you had no idea whether it was going to happen or not. For me, that is really hard onboarding. Where we are now, it's no comparison at all. And so I think there's two ways to look at this, which is making onboarding easy is trivializing what we're trying to accomplish here. And therefore, people are going to shortcut the thing that really matters here, which is to think about your money, to think about where it goes, to think about what you're doing with it, and to check yourself before you wreck yourself. Now, if you wreck yourself, you get wrecked and it doesn't happen again. If you don't go through that journey, you don't have that painful experience, then you're just kind of sleepwalking through life and just expecting everything to be done for you, which I think is fine to a degree. And it's like consumer protections, all that stuff. But I don't inherently see a problem with people having to work a little bit harder and think a little bit harder. And interestingly enough, recently, I've come to realize that in the creative space that I'm in, the camera is really flattering. The LUTs that we use, really flattering. The lights that we use, really flattering. In fact, every single tool that I use is incredibly flattering. I jump into Unreal Engine to try and do shit there. It's humbling how insanely difficult it is, how very, very impractical the whole thing is. And yet I'm so happy doing that, because I know that every single solution I come up with could only be come up with by me. Therefore, I'm being genuinely creative and problem solving for myself. And there's something really exciting about that there is no template, there's no shortcut. You just have to go and do that. And I think humanity has kind of lost the need to solve problems for itself. And I think removing that from crypto is removing what I think for the people in this space has been one of the best things about it, which is finding their own solutions and finding their own path through the mess. But we're talking mass adoption here. So, I'm just going to throw that out to you guys because this is how I feel about it. But you may disagree.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, it's fascinating, really, to hear that perspective. And actually, I probably reflect on the fact that if it wasn't for Nifty Gateway and the ease of credit card purchase, at a point last year, I wouldn't have bought my first NFT. And I know, Sven, perhaps you credit Nifty Gateway as your entry point into this space as well. But I can totally see your point about the enjoyment of, it's almost that mindset of the thrill of the chase, actually, to deliver something satisfying. But I do believe, counter to that if there has to be an accelerated consumer experience, it has to be more frictionless. That's my view. Although, Sven, I'd love to get your take.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously I'm the same way. I think the vast majority of people that came in the first half of last year, they owe a debt of gratitude to either Top Shot or Nifty Gateway, right? I mean, they were massive onboarding platforms that really catapulted everything forward. I mean, OpenSea would not have experienced the growth that they experienced if not for people kind of getting a taste of Web3 via Top Shot and Nifty. And then they said, like me, I started buying NFTs last January. By April, I finally set up a MetaMask. I think part of the problem right now is just MetaMask isn't great. It serves a phenomenal purpose, but it is not the easiest interface. You don't understand what you're signing. This is why people get wrecked oftentimes. But I certainly agree that there's so much more opportunity and empowerment through self-custody and navigating Web3 via your own wallet. But to get there, you can't just decide one day, I'm going to get into NFTs. And okay, I download a MetaMask. What next? I mean, the number of people I've had ask me, what next? How do I get crypto into this? Why can't I just pay with my credit card? Through Noobs, we were giving out free NFTs to friends and family, people in our community. And the only thing I said was get them on Discord and help them set up a MetaMask. And that was like pulling teeth. Oh, well, like, how do I tell my friends to set up a MetaMask? It's still too challenging. I know a lot of people go out of their way to do this, to have these info sessions, but like that gap is still pretty wide to bring people from, kind of a Web 2 experience into Web 3, which I think, Nifty, Coinbase, as they grow, will continue to help that. But it doesn't mean that we're going to go completely with a custodial route, right? You need to have both options. I just think that for hitting that 10 million, 100 million active users, custodial is going to be that massive on-ramp, right? And then the people that self-select into other avenues of Web3 to do more there, you cannot do everything you want to do in the space via custodial outlets. You have to take more control over what you're doing, but it's tough to start there. So I don't think we've kind of bridged the divide that we need to, but I think those platforms are coming, right? And they're improving.
So I think we make an assumption here that everyone is like us, and that's something I have to kind of confront every day. And so I'm making it a point to talk to my daughter about all of this because she's 9 years old. And I talked to her about this anime character I have in front of me here today. She loves anime. She actually wants to start YouTubing. And I'm obviously mortified about this because I don't want her face on the internet. And I don't want her to be subject to the same kind of horrific commentary that I get on videos here because I know it'll break her. But at the same time, it's something she wants to do. She wants to share her experiences in Minecraft in particular with the world. So we were looking at ways that she could take a VTuber, this anime character, and become that. So it's not her face, but it's her personality, and it could be something that she could design and dress up. And that's really fun. But she doesn't care about credit cards or any of these things. And so are we saying that her experience isn't valid, or that that's not an audience? Because I feel like that generation, my kids' generation, are the ones that are going to run with this and take it to places we could never imagine because they're not bound by these same neuroses that we are.
Well, I mean, yes, there is a problem with the financialization of Web3. And it's not just about profit. Profit is what's driving a lot of the interest here. There's a whole other aspect to it, which is empowerment. I mean, think about the number of people in the past year who have found their identity, right? Which is a lot of what your daughter is seeking. That's what most kids are seeking, is kind of how to find themselves. And I think you have these silly cartoon avatars, adults are finding themselves again, right? I mean, it is really empowering and interesting to watch people who, we don't know their names, we don't know their faces, but via their voice on Twitter and via their online identity, they've amassed massive followings, massive communities. They've gotten something far more valuable in many ways than just pure financial gain. The challenge is so much of what we do day to day is dominated by financial gain. And we'd be naive to say that doesn't matter. Of course it matters. And it is what is it. If we didn't have the massive gains in Top Shot in January, you wouldn't have had, the next 500,000 people coming in saying, what can I do? If apes didn't, these apes minted out, they kind of look fun, and all of a sudden they did 1,000x on their returns. That wouldn't drive the attention. But you were right, there's more to this, and maybe over time that starts to matter more. I don't think that in the next few years the profit motive is going to become secondary, and that's, I mean, I'd love to be proven wrong, because that'd be a really great outcome for a lot of reasons. And I do expect people will continue to enjoy this for reasons other than profit, but the profit motive will be dominant, at least for the foreseeable future, in my opinion.
So I put up.
Can I bring another?
Yeah, go ahead, Ross.
I'm
Go
just
ahead.
going to bring another question to the table, which I've been mulling over, and I don't know the answer, so I'd love to get your views on this, which is kind of an extension of what we're talking about. Is the blockchain that underpins or underlies the particular NFT? And I think probably all three of us are Ethereum fans, or at least for high value assets, they or collectibles, they need to sit as an Ethereum token. But we've talked about Top Shot and the Dapper ecosystem and some of these other options for onboarding and bringing mass adoption. And I wonder, for the next wave of consumers, if there is going to be a complete irrelevance in the blockchain and actually where these assets sit. Because I think about Netflix and I think about iTunes and other sort of Web2 consumables. You don't know where they sit and you don't care. You just want to consume the thing that you want to buy. And if NFTs are fundamentally going to become a representation of the individual online, it's far more important about the asset than where the asset sits and what technology is behind that asset. So I just am mulling over, and some of the artist conversations that we're having about the future of their strategies, how important the blockchain is, and whether that will become less significant as we move towards greater adoption.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm sorry, I just wanted to flag up how very eerily similar my avatar here is to you, Ross. And it's also picking up your audio. So when you speak, it speaks, but it's mirroring my movements. It's kind of freaky, right? The blockchain. Well, there's a couple of schools of thought on this, which is, do you care who puts the gas into your house? Do you care who serves up your electricity? Probably not. Do you care who your internet service provider is? Only on a cost level. So will you care who the blockchain is? No. But should you? And I think, again, it's a generational thing. There is a generation of people, of humans, who are more mindful of where things are coming from, including their food, the plastic waste that they generate. And I know this because I'm bringing up a human into this world that I'm trying to engage in a more kind of honest and meaningful interaction with the world around them. But again, my world is like this wide. And so I think my daughter won't care, but she might care if it means that she can do something that she wants to do in a better way. So I don't want to discourage her from looking at the underpinnings of all of this stuff. And what's fascinating about all of this is that we've never been able to look at the underpinnings before. They've never been exposed to us because they've always been protected by IP or these closed gardens. The project that really stood out to me this week was Lens Protocol, because it was the first attempt to do a social media decentralized project in this space that looked like it was attacking the right bit. So I've seen a number of different social media type projects grow up, and they've always been a kind of facsimile of a Twitter or a Facebook or something else, where it really only makes sense if you have enough users there. This wasn't doing this. This was saying the bit that matters is the social graph. It's the bit that serves up. It's the bit that feeds the algorithm, basically, for Facebook. We're going to open source that and decentralize it so that anyone can go and view it and audit that piece of technology and see where the heat maps are, and then go and build apps that specifically target those, so that it's sort of flipping that on its head, rather than saying, we know all these users are liking this stuff, and so we're going to feed them what they want. It's more, we know there are users here and they like stuff, so now if you like stuff as well, you can be there, which is fascinating. I mean, it can be gamed, obviously, and it's ramjacked full of NFTs, so the NFT haters are going to hate it. But for me, that was like the first tiny little sign that Web3, the metaverse, actually has a thing that makes sense for me. And that was literally the first time I've seen it. Ross, I brought up your website just a second ago because there was a little quote on there. Do you mind me bringing it up again? because it's sort of
Go for it. It's not
I
great.
just want to ask you, like, there's no right answer here, but you're specifically talking about the metaverse. So we are the link between artists, fans, and the metaverse, allowing creators to put their communities at the heart of what they do in Web3. 2 questions for you. What do you see as the metaverse? And secondly, like, what is Web3? No right answer here, no wrong answer.
They are big questions. Big
Absolutely.
questions. And it's interesting actually, because as well as Fan3, I also run another which is called Hidden, and we are a talent consultancy centered in diversity and inclusion. So it's an embedded model across the creative economy where we work with high growth businesses and plug in and help them build their teams in the right way. And at the moment, I've been bridging the 2 businesses to understand how we can bring diversity, equity, and inclusion into Web3 and the high growth businesses that we're familiar with, which is the inclusion drop last week was kind of a case in point for that, because I think it's absolutely essential to the future of what we're all trying to achieve. And in that, I've had to do a fair bit of education and content writing to traditional creative businesses, like advertising agencies, data and marketing businesses, around the opportunity, the consumer audience in Web3, how they need to be considering their strategy. Felt a little bit like, to be honest, winding back to trying to teach advertising agencies about social media and why there is a huge consumer audience that's not just on TV. And it's like the next iteration of that. But a lot of that questions has been very, very fundamental. So what is the metaverse? Are we just going to live in a computer game? Or what is Web3? And I think ultimately what they are is not what they will become. And I think sometimes when you consider the definition of what they are, you need an element of openness in that the reality actually isn't there yet. For me, the metaverse is an extension of in real life into a digital economy and a digital realm. So that is recreating experiences, interaction, community, and an economy in the digital space. And then I think Web3 for me is the third iteration of the internet, where rather than centralized ownership, we have decentralized ownership, and the things that are owned by a few become equitably owned by everybody. That's probably a fairly wrong answer, but it's my answer. And, I think it will evolve as I learn more and continue on this journey.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I'm going to come back to that, but in true fashion, this show has attracted a sponsor. And in order to keep paying for such high quality guests as yourself, no, we don't pay you. We need to play the sponsor message. So we'll come back. And when we do return, we'll have Waxbones. We'll have a genuine artist on the show. Thank God for that. Some real culture coming up after this. Optimistic Bunnies is one of the first projects to launch on the Optimism Network. So you know what that means? It means the world won't stop moving when you mint them. And you shouldn't be priced out either. There are over 100 different accessories for the bunnies, which are minting now for the price of 0.025 Ether. Lots of cool things are coming, including companion characters, which all current token holders could receive for free. Hop on over to www.optimisticbunnies.com to learn more and mint yours today. Yo, we are back. This is the Defiant NFT show. We have Sven, we have Ross and Fan3, and now we have Waxbones. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hi guys, good to meet you all.
There's a disturbing proliferation of English accents on this show. Sven, you're outnumbered.
You know what? I'm not even going to try my best impersonation of Brit, so I'll just I'll be a token American.
I
used to get told I looked a bit like Prince William, though, but then he lost his hair, so that was the closest I came.
Yes, you do. I love that, Sven.
Sven looked in the mirror and realized with a sickening thud in his basement floor that he was, in fact, a Prince William lookalike. But he wouldn't be sleeping with Kate that night. Oh, no.
As far as you know.
Oh, good times. Waxbones, let's introduce you properly. You are an artist, and that's pretty much what you do, right?
I mean, I'm an artist. If you like my art or consider the random doodles and things that I do art, then yeah, sure.
And you
by
say
day,
you're chatting shit on Waxing Lyrical every Tuesday. You're an artist and graphic designer. To give us a little kind of snapshot of your NFT journey so far.
So okay, yeah. So I'm basically a graphic designer by trade, and by day I work full time as a graphic designer. I actually design mapping and wayfinding systems for cities and things like that.
Okay, stop. Hang on. What? You do what? Hang on. If we look back at this, what's that got to do with mapping and wayfinding?
Literally nothing.
Literally nothing.
So I went to uni to become a graphic designer. I fell into a job, designing maps and signs for cities and transit and things like that. I've been doing that now for about 10 years. I got to go to Moscow and live there for a year. I've lived in New York and keep coming back to the UK. So that's the official me over that side of things. And then you've got the other side of me that just draws stupid little characters and skulls and goo and things like that.
Yeah, go, you keep going. I'm just looking at your work. I'm like, I can't see it. I'm like, what?
I'm actually a very professional graphic designer with very specific aesthetic where everything has to be very clean and simple and on a grid but you need an outlet to just explore other avenues and play, and sometimes you don't want to be held back by a client. So I think it was around the start of the pandemic where my buddy Gavin Strange, who goes by Jam Factory, he's also an NFT artist and a director at Aardman Animations. He was getting involved with NFTs, and I messaged him and I was like, mate, what in the hell is an NFT? Wait, am I allowed to swear on this?
Oh, fuck yes.
Okay, sweet. I was like, what the fuck is an NFT? And he basically introduced me to what was happening. And then the guys at Known Origin spotted some of my work that I was posting. And this was all stuff that I was posting for fun. And they said, do you want to come onto the platform? I think you'd like really fit in over on Known Origin. So I was like, yeah, go on then. So I gave it a go. I minted my Genesis piece just to see what would happen. Plus at the time, gas was expensive and I didn't want to invest lots of money into something that, one, I didn't fully understand, and two, I had no following for this type of work previously. And I guess I got kind of lucky, and a few big names picked up my Genesis, and then from there it's just snowballed over the past year and a little bit, really.
So who were those big names? Because I'm pretty sure Sven knows them.
So Yanis Sourdis bought one, Brian Brinkman bought one, Xcopy bought one of my second pieces, I think, or my third piece. So I guess just having a few names like that bought me loads of recognition, and they tweeted about it, which then people followed, and it sort of just spiraled from there on.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how that can happen. And I really want to just kind of dial back to where we were at last year, because there was this moment, and it was like 6 weeks or something, where art just, like, people were just hungry for art. And it didn't last that long, but Sven, you were right in the middle of all of that. Can you remember it? Can you remember like the conditions under which like Waxbones emerged?
It was a really special time for I think a lot of us, and what made a lot of us kind of fall in love with NFTs, because we all became true art collectors. I mean, I have no artistic background whatsoever, and yet I was discovering where my taste was. I think that a lot of people had that shared experience. What was interesting about it, though, I was actually thinking about this the other day. There's a period in February and March where we had debates about, oh, they're a collector, but they're a flipper. And collectors are better than flippers because flippers aren't in it for the art, right? And for, I think that this period that you're referring to, the art mattered. And it still matters, but you've seen a shift take place where, we talked about the profit motive before. Profits and flipping matter more right now. And so, what I find frustrating, I really empathize with the artists who have to deal with this. Nothing has changed for what you're doing. You're just creating. You create because you were doing this before it was profitable. Now it's profitable, and that's great. You should be able to make profit on it, but it's become much harder. And so now you do have to rely on, well, who are who are the collectors that are kind of lifting you up? Because without that, right, if you hadn't had the good fortune of having some really great collectors and fellow artists, see the brilliance in your work, you'd be fighting for attention in a very competitive space. I mean, the number, since we launched our membership pass on the Mad Pups launched on Nifty Gateway, the number of artists that have just reached out to us and said, how do I drop on Nifty with you guys? And I don't have a good answer for them. And a lot of them are really talented, but like, I see what people have to do, which is basically begging for attention. And who am I to say that one artist is more talented than the other? I've identified art that I like, some of which is probably not technically very good, but I like it. That's fine. And that's part of the empowerment of Web3, right? We all individually and collectively have the power to decide, what we hold in high esteem, high value. But it has shifted, right? It's about the art still, but it's not fully about the art anymore.
Yeah, well, I guess there's a question here. And before we even answer that question or even pose that question, we should welcome Vector Meldrew to the stream.
Hi.
It's from the year 2258. It's Vector Meldrew.
Sorry I'm late. I've been really busy hating on NFTs this week on Twitter, and it just takes up a lot of time doing all the trolling and sending the line goes up video to everyone. So I was a bit late.
Yeah, you've done something to your voice as well.
Oh,
wowzers.
That's annoying.
Last week it was Sven. Now it's you. Amateurs.
Bear with.
I've got a question for you. Like, you were able to surf the wave that first time around. Progression, where do you go next? That difficult second album, what does that look like for you now?
Well, I don't know. I've got lots of things in the work. I think at the moment it's kind of expected that people are going to do a character-based generative project. I'm not going to do that. Like, I feel like there's too many out there. People have been begging me for it, but it's not for me. Like, if I'm going to do a generative project, it's going to use the technology in an interesting way. It's not just going to be a cat with laser eyes. You know what I mean? So at the moment, I'm just finishing up a collaborative generative project with Rembrandt at the moment, which should be dropping soon, which is going to which is really interesting. I think we've got if you don't know him, he's a Rembrandt-esque painter, and I'm more of like I guess Disney meets tattoo culture illustrator, and we're kind of meshing together our two styles. So it's coming out really interesting. And I think so that's in the immediate future. Then from then, I want to keep building my brand as something new and pushing the boundaries and not necessarily leaning on what's currently being done. And I think that's something, speaking about like February, last year, when I came into the space, it felt, I think of it as the 3D astronaut era of NFTs, because there was so much of it. Everyone was using the same astronaut asset, and it was really popular, and that's great. And then I came in and I was not a 3D artist, and that's why I was really worried at the beginning. But I think this past year has kind of helped me to be more confident with my brand and what I can do, and releasing clothing alongside NFTs and thinking about how physical and digital meet each other. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question, but I'm kind of just playing still. I want to try everything.
Have you used any of your career background pre this? Have you considered bringing that into the metaverse from a design perspective, like how people are building in Sandbox and how when that's live as a gamified platform, how that experience from a user you will journey map through that world. Because there sort of seems to me something. I was speaking to a fantastic business yesterday where they're working with traditional architects who are using their renders and 3D asset libraries for incredible buildings, which can now basically be turned into assets for the metaverse. But wondering if you could you ever considered that side of this amazing space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes hand in hand. Like, I think the same user experience and interface that people, the journey touch points and the thought process that people go through when exploring a city or catching a train in a new country. I think that same idea and thought process can be applied to digital cities. Like, why not? You need to be able to find your way somehow. I mean, I play video games, and from a wayfinding perspective, most of the little mini maps that you use or wayfinding, route along, follow this, most of the time I think they're terrible, and actually you end up getting more lost. And I do think that some of those cognitive processes and building of mental maps, not just through physical maps, but through points of recognition. So I'm going to go past the big statue of the lion. That is a piece of wayfinding, it's all of these memory points. And I think the same can be applied to Sandbox or anything really.
Yeah, there's definitely a degree to which there's going to be a whole bunch of transferable skills. And I think what was great was for people who've been releasing their work on Instagram, there was a ready-made audience that was financially ready to put their hands in their pockets to just go after something. And in our industry, as creators, it's always been the opposite. Like, you really have to squeeze quite hard to get any kind of cash out of anybody to do anything. Like, trying to make a film in the UK right now, it's basically impossible. It's basically impossible. You have to do so many contra deals with TV companies all over the world that by the time you actually get the film made, it's so complex that you end up with no money in your pocket whatsoever. It's a really difficult thing. It boils down to, as far as I understand it, audience. And when people hate on Beeple, they conveniently forget that he just relentlessly posted shit day after day after day after day after day after day after day. That is not a model you can replicate. So people hate on him for finally having a reason to cash in or make that into something meaningful. I'm missing the point. They're missing the graft, because there was a lot of graft alongside it, however much you may like or dislike the art. But I think, Ross, that seems to be the kind of heart of what you're creating here is a way for audience and artists to be at least in some way 50-50 partners in whatever ends up being created, which has never been the case before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about being able to empower creators across the whole of the creative industry, right? Vector and I have had conversations about the advertising industry, where we've both populated in various ways over the last 8-10 years. As I referenced earlier, we work with musicians who are, is there a better word than victim to the sort of 80-20 record label model, which is, stifling income and creativity, and the whole democratization of access to the prosperity that this world can bring for creators, whatever your background. And I think we're trying to encourage people to just find their place, find their passion, release themselves into this kind of world of opportunity. But I keep saying it, we have to make sure that this world is ready for everybody from all different backgrounds. You can kind of even call ourselves out here. When we look around this webinar, it's not a particularly perceived diverse group of people, right? And we have to make sure that we're welcoming people from all cultures, all ethnicities, all backgrounds, all sexualities, and that when we can bring that, the richness of creativity and styles and forms and opportunities is just going to exponentially grow, which is amazingly exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, every week we go, okay, we're going to make a more diverse panel, and we fail. And it's not because we're not trying, it's because it's really difficult to connect human beings, even just for a tiny little kind of 2-hour window in the week. And the women that we want to connect with, and the 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 people from different ethnic backgrounds. But it's just we can't access them and get them, and we're not probably trying hard enough. And that's a very, very fair point. I guess we have this challenge in front of us, which is to remove money from the equation. And I always say that, like, money, we think of money as being the problem, but it's not having any money that is the problem for most artists. And once you solve that, then things become a lot easier, and it's easy to look at people who have achieved success and they've achieved some kind of financial freedom. They go, oh, yeah, they can do whatever they want, but of course they can't. So I feel like
can we bring up though about artists, right? We talk about artists so much. Is the future of Web3 just art? No, it's not, right? And I think that, like, when you touched on this period, right, in February, March last year, that really special 6-week period when art had this moment, it was a true digital renaissance of the growth of NFTs and digital art. That art existed before, but now it was something that could be you could directly connect with consumers because of Web3, right? That we talked about this, you're asking the question before, what is Web3? Web3, decentralized online ecosystems, enabling people to connect kind of peer-to-peer in a way that didn't exist before. But as we move forward, and part of what artists are grappling with, art is one segment of Web3. It is an empowering segment, but it is, if all Web3 is, and I hate to say this, if all Web3 is helping artists make money, that's great. But then Web3 long-term will be a fad, right? I mean, there is so much more here that we talk about: online connection, online identity, online governance, right? I think that what is happening is we're seeing kind of the siloing of pure art. And so now artists are being forced to figure out, okay, well, how do I continue to maintain the value? Because there were massive bubbles that took place, and not just February, March. I mean, art blocks, same thing, right? We saw a massive art blocks bubble, and those of us that went through Nifty Gateway pointed out, like, history is repeating itself. Oh no, this is different. It wasn't different. It was the same exact thing, and we will see this time and time again. And so, some artists, I think Fuckrender actually pointed this out, that this was an issue he faced. Tried to provide a lot of utility. Now there's more expectations, right? Like, art trying to stay relevant beyond what it initially was. And so I think a lot of us are thinking about this. Like, art is a core component of Web3, right? It is a core component of NFTs, but it is not the only thing, and it clearly will not be the only thing. So how do you kind of marry the relevance and emergence of digital art in with true value in the NFT space with what's coming next? And that's hard. I don't think anyone really knows that, because people don't like to be told, oh, people cared about art back last year, but now it's just one thing and it's not as relevant anymore. That's kind of what's occurred. I mean, correct me if anyone thinks I'm wrong, but it's been a difficult thing for people who had these meteoric rises to then face. Maybe that was a little bit too much too soon.
Okay, so I'm going to step out here into Strauss-Howe territory, the generational theory. Are you guys aware of this? I see blank faces.
No,
I'm happy to say I've not gone.
We're not as smart as you are, so this is going to be educational for all of us. I'm the noob here.
So Strauss and Howe have described a theorized pattern in historical generations that they examined, and they wrote a book called Generations. And in that, they identify these 4 periods called turnings that seem to repeat and echo throughout human history. And it's remarkable how kind of generalized but also accurate they are. So you have the first period, which is called the high, which occurs after a crisis. During the high, institutions are strong, individualism is weak. Society is confident about where it wants to go collectively, although those outside the majority and center often feel stifled by the conformity. Then you have the awakening. The second turning is an awakening. This is an area where institutions are attacked in the name of personal and spiritual autonomy. Just when society is reaching its high tide of public progress, people suddenly tire of social discipline and want to recapture a sense of self-awareness, spirituality, and personal authenticity. Young activists look back at the previous high as an era of cultural and spiritual poverty. Then you have the unraveling. The mood of this era is the opposite. Institutions are weak and distrusted, while individualism is strong and flourishing. So when society wants to coalesce and build and avoid the death and destruction of the previous crisis, unravelings come after awakenings. Then you have the crisis. This is an era of destruction, often involving war or revolution, in which institutional life is destroyed and rebuilt in response to a perceived threat to the nation's survival. And in this period, basically what happens is artists take the lead, creatives take the lead in the rebuilding of what comes next as we move into the high. There's a lot of economists that are sort of seeing where we are now as the beginning of the fourth turning. It's big in general, but when we talk about artists, we're not just talking about people who paint and people who might do graphic design. We're talking about people who are creative. And creatives generally are defined by two things. They're poor, and they also question things. That's it. The creativity part is important, but creatives generally, they question things, and they're less fussed about money, and so they're more tolerant of being poor because it kind of comes with the territory. What I'm seeing at the moment is artists can not be poor, but they're still questioning things, so they're incredibly empowered to change stuff. And what's amazing about the blockchain and about cryptocurrencies, it's the speed. It's like this massive catalytic converter that just supercharges everything and makes it happen 10 times as fast as it normally would. And that's why I find it so fascinating, because I am a creative. I'm a filmmaker. I've come to this completely from the outside. I mean, I know how to read and I know how to analyze stuff. And I've been forced down this path of DeFi and NFTs and all this other stuff. But I had a conversation with Andrew Yang this week, like as in presidential candidate Andrew Yang. But I didn't reach out to him. He reached out to me. I'm like, in what world is that normal? In what world does that guy approach me? And it was a fantastic conversation about what it's going to take to push through bipartisan regulation for cryptocurrencies in Congress. I'm like, in what world did this guy with his stupid anime avatar have a voice in that debate? It's bizarre, but it just shows you the power of having, firstly, the creative mindset, which is challenge stuff and do it with artfulness, but also, you know, this ability to exist in abject poverty and be okay. We're cockroaches, but beautiful cockroaches. I'm just going to send that out there and see what comes back.
Well, just one thing though to add. You talked about the speed with which all this transpired, and so artists discovered that they can, you know, also have wealth, but they're still creative. But with that turning and that speed, you know, we know what wealth corrupts, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people. Would everyone be okay if they went back to selling their art for nothing? You know, I think that again, it gets to the profit motive that's kind of taken over NFTs, and everyone looking for, you know, there's never enough, you know, wealth that you can accumulate, right? You know, you set out with a goal, you hit that, now what's next? And so I just wonder, you know, the creativity is what pushes all of this forward, and it is what excites all of us. But I mean, that money, it's powerful. It attracts people. It can corrupt people, and it's a balance, right? And money is what matters most in this space right now. I mean, I don't think anyone would dispute that. So I just throw that out there too.
I'm going to challenge that, because I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think it helps to a degree, but I'm going to put it over to Vector and to kick it off, just to challenge that. Is it the most important thing?
How's my mic? Is it better?
Yeah, it's much better.
Yeah, turned it off and turned it on again. Classic technology issue. That is a good question to pass over to me. Is money the most important thing? It's like a hot potato in some ways. I feel like, you know, there's definitely something exciting about artists finally having financial freedom, and, you know, for so long art having to be, maybe it depends where you're creating from, doesn't it? Because there's definitely money around, and there's definitely people making a lot of money, and it's about, you know, keeping in touch with that creativity even when you're not necessarily motivated by the money. You know, you're working from a completely different place now. So I think that place is interesting to explore, because it's not necessarily something we've seen at scale before so much in the art world and in history. You know, there's only so many artists that blew up and made a lot of money, and now there seem to be more, and there seem to be from a group that didn't necessarily think digital artists didn't necessarily, like Beeple, for example, every day is that the goal of that, obviously ambitious and to get somewhere, but it wasn't like there was always this direct payoff in sight. It was definitely from a place of, ambition, but creativity and learning and experimenting. So there's a whole bunch of people that have come from that same frame of digital art, thinking up until now we had to, sell our soul to unethical brands and do service work here. Now there's at least a different avenue. And I guess it's about not making sure that the money doesn't corrupt that. And we're still creating from that pure place that we were creating when, we didn't know that we could get paid in cryptos and, use the blockchain.
Well, you've given me the perfect segue to bring on the next guest. Put your hands together for Anton. Anton is going to add a very interesting piece to this puzzle because...
Hi, guys. Hi.
So Anton is from Moving Now, but I think it's probably best if you explain kind of what you're up to and how this all connects to this essential concept of money with NFTs.
Oh, that's a good take.
Just before we do, can I tag in and tag out with Anton? Because I've got to jump on a Spaces in 2 minutes.
No, you can't. You're locked in for the next hour and a half.
So I just want to say thank you,
Russ.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be part of the conversation. Anton, I'm sorry I can't listen to About Mover, but I'm going to check it out and do my own research. Back to everybody. Sven, great to see you. Waxbones, love to learn more about your work. And thank you very much for having me today.
Beautiful.
Bye.
Thanks, Royce.
We have to have the V, Ross, next time so that it's time locked.
So Anton, give us an overview of what you're up to, because it's absolutely fascinating. This kind of blew my mind when I heard that you were up to this. I'm going to try and bring something onto the stream here.
I think
a little hint of it.
Oh yeah. So I think that's the story that you're telling here, where we were like a year ago, right, as an industry, and then where we're moving towards to. So what Mover is about is basically making that DeFi available for everyday banking. So how you, as a DJ and as a crypto native, can have your MetaMask and have all your freedoms, while still sort of trying to fit in with this entire world of compliance, legal, all this stuff that is just there. You can't deal without it. So that was what we were focused for like over a year, is trying to connect everything that you do in DeFi, including savings and everything, and make it easily, natively adaptable to the crypto card, like a debit card. So that's the concept of sort of money, the vision of money that we had, which was fairly, it was there. DeFi, was at top. That's everything we talked about, all the new protocols, all the new things, all the new forks. Everybody was excited about it. But as we were going further, that was a nice ape. So as we were going forward, you could see that I would say something, as a simple concept as NFTs, and we're still, I would believe, somewhere 0.1, I would say, stage where this sort of the top of the show is the PFP projects out there. But then there's so many interesting concepts now that are happening with NFTs. So what we saw is the infrastructure that we have. All the DeFi stuff that was once super fascinating and super exciting is all of a sudden is the infrastructure. It should not be visible. Instead, it's the exciting stuff that NFT worlds opens up, and that's what is exciting. To bring to the point, it's not all about the money. I see, because we are only dealing with money, right? All I see is actually now it's about social interaction. Which is pretty interesting, because DeFi, you're dealing with contracts. It's it's ruthless numbers. It's not people. It may be degens behind someone running those contracts, but everything is sort of straightforward. In the NFT world, it's all about the social interaction, and then the thought we had is, how do we make that infrastructure work in favor of that social interactions? So how do we connect all those different NFT projects? How do we connect all those metaverses? What is a metaverse, right? So how does a metaverse sort of, in our understanding today, is different from the metaverse, in a year or so. How fast, right, we're advancing into all this stuff, and sort of like when everything changes, on a daily basis, how do you make it work? So how does money connect people? Actually, it's just pretty funny, because it may sound like an oxymoron, but it turns out that indeed money does connect people, and that's basically what we're doing with now with the MetaCard.
Yeah, so we were talking about these alternative financial systems, and we were talking about onboarding as well. So the standard idea is that you are an in real life human being that has a talent or a skill, and you can take that into the metaverse, or you can take that into crypto, and then you earn there, and then you come back out again, like it's some kind of weird expensive spa that you go and get a kind of crazy treatment, and then you come back out. But I think what people are kind of waking up to is the idea that actually the real world is where is actually the odd place, and that the metaverse and these relationships that we have are actually normal. I think for boomers, probably Gen Z, millennials, that's quite hard to wrap your head around. But for Gen Alpha, that this is normal. So what you're proposing, I think, is a banking system or a set of banking principles that make sense for the people that are going to be using this and are going to be native to it. And I hate the word crypto native because it feels like it's like this odd colony or strange commune somewhere out there in a mountaintop somewhere. But actually it's not. It's just human beings interacting with each other in a social digital landscape. But am I kind of getting close to it?
Absolutely. Just one thing also to add there. I think there's a very hard concept to grasp for boomers, right? Is the duality of your identity in a sense, because it's actually what's happening every day, right? I mean, like social masks. I mean, forget about crypto for a second, right? At work, you could be one sort of person, right? At night, it's sort of you're somebody else. In crypto, right? You're free to be who you want to be. It's not, it's not just one legal identity. Across different projects, across different communities, people behave differently. Not in a sense, it's something bad or in a bad way, but they are free to express themselves. And that social interaction is actually, very, very important, because again, it brings us back to, the freedom that, was very, very interesting. Sven was also talking about, selling art for money instead of, for nothing as it was before. All of those little things out there, again, they all connect to the money, but then the money is just the fuel, for you to sort of go ahead and experience something. That sort of metaverse banking, is an idea. It's, forget about that for a second. How many times, right, do you think about your bank, like, offline kind of bank? You only think about it when something's wrong, when something's not working, when you can't do what you want to do, right? And I think what we want to get to that point in the metaverse, that native experience that people are trying to, build, that sort of immersive experience that people are trying to create in their worlds. And, that should give you those like social powers. So basically, you've earned something, you've had your axes, breeding, like you have your whatever now, small brains kind of like reading, you have to have that available to you, like in the offline world. It doesn't have to be that hectic experience where there's this separation, right, between those things. Okay, well, that's not real money. There's some magic money right out there on the internet. And then you have to kind of follow through that vigorous process of trying to get that out and explain, and, trying to explain to your bank. It's like, okay, well, I got thousands of dollars because, these little creatures they look kind of fancy, but, they breed. And then I got some tokens out there. So then I sold those tokens for some other tokens. And then I, exchange those tokens for ETH, and ETH is kind of hard money. We all know ETH is going to 10K, right? And then all of those things, right? And then it just makes your life kind of complicated. But yeah, going back to this kind of interesting social concept, I think that the key part here is, every metaverse right now is separated. People are trying to like collaborate and then trying to create those, I would say, somewhat joined metaverses, but they're all separated. I mean, Axie has nothing to do with, small brains, right? Which is running on some different, universe on some different chain. And it may be the same users that are using both and doing both things, right? But they're like completely isolated. And sort of the way I see is banking or, money is what can connect those worlds. because if you allow the economies to kind of like flow back and forth, now that just strengthens the the economies of those projects. So it becomes a pretty cool thing on how do you try to connect things that were built isolated in a native way. So through the users, through that social interaction.
Yeah, there's a commonality of philosophy between PFP communities, even if they might hate on each other's art, or there's an artistic kind of taste thing there. Generally, NFT people are quite similar. And I think you're absolutely right. I had this idea a long time ago of a stable NFT, and I was going to call it Vermin. And it was going to be this stable NFT that you could breed it, which is kind of like staking effectively. But you could also be an exterminator. So it was this kind of incentive mechanism. Like most people would intrinsically want to breed because more of something is better. But actually you incentivize the exterminators by giving them rewards in some other form to keep this thing actually at the peg that it's supposed to be at. And of course, like all of these PFP projects are pretty much some form of zoology in some form or other. So you could have this common asset that would then become the major kind of point of exchange for PFPs rather than ETH, try and peg it to $1 or something, but use this gamified mechanism to keep the arbitrage working for you. And I thought that'd be really fun. It'd be like Duck Hunt, but like you have those who breed and those who exterminate. Funnily enough, there's this new project I've seen called ZooDao. And here it is. I've got the light paper up. So this is ZooDao. ZooDao enables users to realize the true value of their NFTs. So you can understand from the name Zoo, they're trying to create this catch-all for all of the PFPs and all of the NFTs that are kind of vaguely related to zoology or, animals or anything else. And it's a staking mechanism, but you can also battle them. So it's trying to create this massive universe in which any PFP, any NFT can plug in and be part of this extended universe. I don't have enough information on this yet, but I love the fact that that people are trying to make this happen, because it feels like there's so much energy at so many different levels in PFPs, particularly 10,000, 20,000 collections, that if you could find a way to kind of harness all of that and bring it all together, that it might benefit everyone. And it wouldn't just be, oh, well, I didn't buy CloneX early, therefore I'm screwed, or I didn't buy Zuki early, therefore I'm screwed. But actually there's a place for everybody in that ecosystem, and it doesn't matter where you came from. Sven, have you considered or thought about anything like this in the past?
Yeah, well, in a lot of ways, noobs are launching a Z2. But no, actually, I've thought a lot about how do you give value to, I have 1,500 NFTs. I don't even know. I use a couple of them, but I like a lot more that I have. How do you give more purpose to everything that we're doing and have it not just be speculative collecting? So I have thought a lot about this. What's interesting, Anton hit on a really important point. Two things he said. That I agree. Social interaction of all of this and connectivity is hugely important, but money provides the fuel that's accelerated this forward, right? That's created it's brought so many more builders into the space because of the financial incentive. But you also made a comment that resonates with me. How often do we think about our bank accounts in the real world? I never really think about it. I think about my Ethereum wallets all the time. I mean, it is constantly on my mind. But one thing that I disagree with is, and I think this is probably a fair comment for us. We might not think about our bank accounts a lot, but a lot of people do. I mean, if you think about people who don't have enough, in their bank account, or don't even have access to a bank account, I mean, they're just thinking about, how do I get one? And so what's the relevance of that, for us? I think about the number of people who've come into NFTs seeking a couple of things. They're seeking financial gain. They're also seeking social validation, social connection. And so there are projects, that can help to bring all this together. But I think we shouldn't turn a blind eye to that feeling that a lot of people have, which is like, there's excitement for this, and then there's desperation. I mean, there's people that come in and they think like, okay, I'm looking at this project. Is it going to 10x in a week? And these are the people who, I missed out on Azuki. I missed out on CloneX early in my script. A lot of people are desperate to find their Azuki, their CloneX, get an early on X copy, whatever it might be. You can't go back in time and do that. So how do I identify the next thing? And I do like the idea of projects that are being developed around, giving all this more purpose, because that will help to, I think, reduce this financial pressure that a lot of people feel, right? Because right now, so much of what we're collecting, it's about, and we pulled it up last week, right? We looked at how much all these floors have moved up relative to where all the floors were. If you looked at the top 10 projects, 6, 9, 12 months ago, it's a lot about value right now. And I think, projects that can show another value proposition that, isn't financial value, is going to do a lot of good.
You've just set me up so beautifully for this, but I actually want to just jump to Waxbones from an artist's perspective, like this money thing. Does it preoccupy you, or are you still just enjoying making things?
I think I'm in an interesting situation where I have an income. I have a fixed full-time job, so the money or the Ethereum that I get from sales doesn't bother me quite as much, because I've got a mortgage to pay for, I've got a daughter to feed and clothe and whatever. However, I think I'm starting to transition, or start to at least think and have the conversation about, is it viable for me to quit my job and make this full-time my life? Like, can I do that? And I'm not one to risk everything. And with Ethereum doing this all the time, it's like 1 month I could have enough to pay the mortgage, the next month maybe not. So it's a risky move. So I think money is at the heart of everything in life. In reality, like, everyone needs money to survive in a way. And I guess the other thing with all of this is that the more money an artist gets, if their creativity isn't stifled, then that gives them the means to create different things, or to evolve the way that they're creating. If someone's using pen and paper, they sell that, they get some money, which then they can afford an iPad, which they create NFTs, and then they can afford to create physical, like little toys or whatever. So yeah, sorry, I don't know what my point was there really, but
no, I hear you, and I'm going to bookend there, because from someone that spent 20 years like fighting funding mechanisms and trying to understand how to play the system, because you would see people that were very successful, and you would try to understand why it was that they were successful, and then the decision-making process, particularly in creative arts, seems so arbitrary and random that you just don't know why a particular thing was picked or not. It seems like it has no merit to it whatsoever. And what you learned over the course of 20 years of doing it was that those who survived were those who just simply kept doing it, and that were just kind of... One thing I actually kind of wanted to go back to, which you said previously, was you make these signs. There's this difference between being an artisan and being an artist. And like, artisans are amazing. They're incredibly good at executing according to a vision, according to a template, according to a blueprint, and really, really good at what they do. But then you have artists. Artists are a pain in the ass. They're always disagreeing with you. They're always telling you you're wrong. And then when they come back with something, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm so glad we did this. Whereas an artisan, you're like, yeah, you were great to work with. And you have to ask yourself, which are you? And what you are telling me, Waxbones, is that you are so good at being a professional that you can be both. And that is a phenomenal place to be in, because you can go and, dabble in this weird cryptocurrency thing, but you have the stability of being an artisan. And it's like, artisan's like, oh, he's not an artist. No, fuck you. I'm just like, I know how to do from 9 to 5 and stop. And that really is it. You manage your resources and manage your time accordingly, and then you invoice for it. And that's it. Yeah. And that's a really...
Don't get me wrong, it's fucking difficult. It is I start work at 6:30 in the morning, then I finish at 3, and then I transition into my NFT. I transition from my real name to Waxbones, and then work into the evening, put my daughter to bed, and then keep working. And I guess that hustle, I think that perpetuating this culture of hustle is terrible, and I don't want to perpetuate it, but I don't take my own advice. So I mean, I'm doing this because I love it. I think that is at the moment, that is the main reason I am doing any of this NFT stuff, because I really enjoy it. I find it exciting. I find the technology interesting. I'm collaborating with people I never would have met before, who live in countries I've never been to before, who do things with music or development that I don't understand. And this has given me a chance to play with those people in a big wide crypto world of fun, you know.
And the skeptical view would be you don't need an NFT to have those kind of relationships. If you wanted those relationships, they haven't. That's nothing to do with the token. The problem, and I also think that this is Sven's point as well, which is the hype cycle generates the interest and it brings talent together in ways that it wouldn't have done otherwise, and it's a necessary evil to a degree. And I think it's absolutely right. You know, you need to have a nuclear explosion for life to form. That's the way it has to happen, and that's what we are experiencing right now. And it sucks in so many ways, but in other ways, if you can see the benefits of it, it's fantastic. So I'm curious, any of you, can you see a project which is showing you the path of the future at the moment? Because I think there's a lot of what we're doing is looking in the past and seeing where we've come from, but who's pointing the way towards the future at the moment?
I have some thoughts.
Speak, sir.
I know
Whichever century you're in, speak.
2022. I'm speaking for you from almost the future.
From the present.
Anton touched on it actually, which was small brains, which, you know, part of the larger ecosystem of magic. John Patten, who seems to be an absolute genius, hiring different economists to, you know, do the tokenomics basically for the ecosystem and how different tokens play against each other, basically talking about a 4x of meme coins or metaverse coins.
Okay, wait, slow down, because we actually had John on the show recently, well, like before Christmas. So John is behind the team that was Treasure. Treasure is a project that was kind of that span off of Loot. Loot, I think everyone agrees, is kind of just disappeared and was a hype and was a thing. But a lot of the people that came together from Loot and some other things actually started to do some really fascinating things. John, Treasure, go check it out. Or go and check out the episode where we had him on. Now you can carry on. Sorry, Vector.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't give enough context actually into why it was groundbreaking. But yeah, it came from the Loot days. Treasure was not necessarily given to the Loot people. I think it was just like a peripheral thing, but it seemed to just get a community together. Everyone mobilized based on their different NFTs. They started a contract for staking the NFTs and, you know, dissecting these different bits of treasure which were there. So then you can stake your treasure. That led to basically a fair distribution of this token, which was called Magic. And yeah, whilst they did that, they were building an ecosystem. And essentially, what the reason I think it's groundbreaking is because they've solved the problems of DeFi, which was basically, you know, people just aping in, chasing APY, and then just going to the next fork with, you know, capital rotation basically. But you know, the NFTs give a layer of stickiness to that, so people will stay inside the ecosystem you've created. But then you've got the gamification on top, the fact that there's, you know, this is a treasure and you're on a quest and you're in this thing called Bridge World and you're looking for treasures, but you're looking for treasures so you can mine. And then the you know, this whole layer of a whole GameFi ecosystem along with that, one of which that Anton touched on being small brains. Small brains just seems like pretty funny, and the fact is these, you know, punk 8-bit avatar-esque artwork of these monkeys with big brains. You stake them to grow their IQ. And then these things have relationships. You get a boy and a girl, then you have babies, you got pets that you use for farming. There's going to be a Tinder. They're going to go on Tinder, hook up with each other, make more babies, then go to work in their banana cars and earn money that you can trade on this exchange, like Metaverse 4X exchange. I don't know. To me, that just seems absolutely insane.
Yeah, I'd like to be in front of Congress saying that.
Just your accountant saying that. I met another PFP on Small Brains Tinder. We made some babies, we sold them, and now we're trading meme coins on an exchange. I don't know what the tax implications are of that.
I don't think anybody does. Sven, what are your thoughts? What are you seeing?
You know, it's interesting. We still see a lot of people trying to replicate what came before, right? I mean, obviously, Bored Ape Yacht Club and everything that kind of came out over the summer was trying to replicate, CryptoPunks. And then we've had plenty of projects trying to replicate, the roadmap that Bored Apes have executed upon. And, I think we're starting to see some projects that are deviating from those roadmaps. They're using what's been successful and they're trying to build upon it and incorporate more. And I believe that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I said this last week. I think, Azuki is like that first project that was clearly being built for much longer, than most people would have realized. The team, very strong. And I'm really excited to see where they go. I'm excited to see the projects that come next, because I don't think we really have, we don't have all the brand names that we're going to have in 5-10 years. That doesn't make sense to me. Will some of these projects be relevant? Of course they will. But I think that, Small Brains is very interesting. There are other projects that will probably come out where we'll say, oh, this is so much more interesting than even Small Brains was, right? And we just haven't seen them yet. Like the great projects are still being built. That's kind of my, quick perspective on it. What I do think when you ask about kind of seeing the future, to me right now, it's still a story of like mass adoption. And because it's a very close ecosystem. A lot of people have come in, we've seen more celebrities buying various PFPs. The Super Bowl's coming up. And I don't really care if there's an ape commercial or not, but there will be NFT and crypto commercials that are consumed by the widest audience that we've seen to date. And so what happens coming out of that? Like, what does the Web3 landscape look like when, 1 billion people who, have seen news articles and think this is crazy, and then see, actually, that's kind of cool, right? Like there's that moment that a lot of people have where you can't hear about Web3 and you have one of two reactions. You either dive in, you're curious, you're fascinated, or you're like repulsed by it. And this is nobody has a reaction that is like, okay, and moves on, right? It is two extremes. And I just wonder, like, are we gonna flip a switch in a lot of people's minds where they stop having that repulsed reaction and they become curious? People should be curious. And so kind of a different answer, but that's what I see as the near-term future.
Waxbones, what are you saying? Are there any projects on your radar that you go, ooh, yeah?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of projects immediately spring to mind, and not because of the projects themselves, but what they're going to do for their respective industries. So I think Missing Frontier, which is a P2E game by Missing Watcher and has just been funded by Ubisoft. I think if that's a success, which by all intents and purposes it is, and it is going to continue to grow and grow, it can become the start of NFTs in gaming. And, there's been a huge backlash in the gaming community towards NFTs. And I think it's because they don't fully understand its potential. Like, people are willing to spend hundreds of dollars or pounds on a skin that they don't actually own in Fortnite, whereas, the potential of all of these games working together with an NFT that is your avatar that you use in Fortnite, Missing Frontier, whatever else, I think that's going to be really interesting. And then from a music point of view, I think what Domino's doing with music is really interesting, and the way that he's releasing albums. So if you don't know him, he's an LA based, I guess it's like hip hop, or let's call it hip hop. He's been making music for the past 10 years or so, very small label, not really making much money through Spotify, obviously, like no one does. But so he went independent and he partnered up, he created his album, partnered up with 10 artists who designed an animation. Who designed an animation for each of the tracks. He minted them all, and through his own contract, sold each song or sold the whole album. He ended up making 175k in like a day, and that then opens up different utility that he can bring to the album. So now he's partnering with I think Nifty Gateway and releasing each of his songs as he's partnered with dancers who are bringing dance, who have reimagined what the song could be through dance, and each one of those is selling. So I think once record labels kind of realize that they potentially don't have as much of a purpose as they currently do, again, that split between record labels and the artist or the musician all of a sudden goes back to the musician. And I think what he's doing is going to be really interesting to see how others develop that or evolve that.
Yeah, I just wanted to surface Kotaku. It's a gamer blog. I mean, they hate NFTs in a way that it's almost primeval, the way they hate on them. And it's this guy Luke Plunkett. He's just relentless calling out a scam. When I posted a response and not a rebuttal to Dan Olsen's very long film, kind of calling NFTs the biggest scam in history, I really got attacked, and it seems to come from the gamer community. And so the film I'm going to make next week is going to be trying to understand why, because I mean, people are entitled to their opinion, but I really want to know why. Why do gamers hate NFTs so much? And there will be a reason. And I suspect it's projection of a neurosis or some kind of bias, not towards NFTs, but towards something completely different. And I'm really curious to find out what that is.
And I think it's education as well. It's lack of education, and these media outlets like IGN or Kotaku who haven't done their research or don't see the other side.
But I also think there's a lot of people in NFTs that are complete dickheads. And I think that's
there is that.
Yeah, there's a degree
just like everywhere else. Just like everywhere else, right?
Yeah.
100%. It's just that they're now empowered because they were weak before, and now they're empowered and they want to shout about it. Anton,
you're talking about me,
on your radar,
really
anything
rude.
you see that's like a thing? Sorry, Waxbone, you have more to say.
No, sorry, I was making a joke. It wasn't funny.
Gosh, I know what that feels like. Anton, over to you, sir.
I'm very biased. I'm very biased, obviously. I think I just want to reflect on Sven. Is that, look, you earlier said, right? It's like when you're looking at previous successes, right, and you're looking at the previously successful projects, you're trying to understand what made them successful. And I think if if you're trying to sort of follow it step by step, like replicate it, the approach, the ideas, it's going to be hard. I mean, I think it's a very it's a lower chance that you're going to succeed. So I think it is trying very bold ideas, very crazy ideas. Yeah, I was reading this comment as well. I'm not sure if that's a joke or not. To be honest, it's really hard to understand. Really, it could be meta irony or maybe not.
I suspect it probably is. There's cancel culture is in the news constantly.
Yes,
being over woke, being so woke you're actually asleep. I don't even know anymore, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to say the right thing at the right moment in the right way without pissing someone off. And there comes a point where if you do what I do, like you just self-censor. There is no other way.
Well,
you just work within the lines that you set up, and then you just play moderately safe.
That's another cool thing about NFTs, right? Because your digital identity is not about a gender, is not about the skin color, is not about whatever it is. It's just like your digital identity. It's all about what do you do, and sort of like how do you interact with the community. So it's pretty interesting that there's a lot of cancellation around sort of there's things that should happen or things that should not happen, but there's a lot of cancellation that's it's actually very, very biased on like one of those traits. The entire idea of someone saying like, oh, that's a white male saying something, it's you're losing the grasp. Like what did he say? Is it something that he said that made you sort of offended, or is it just the fact that he said it something? It's like anyways, I'm distracted from the idea, but to me, I think 2022 is going to be the year of the games, the year of the NFTs, the year of metaverses, and
Hang on, I thought 2021 was the year of NFTs.
it's
The second year of NFTs, the sequel this time.
It's everybody's expecting the second DeFi summer, and it's not happening. It's not happening. So, up until you're gonna wake up one day and you're gonna see Uniswap contract as in top, sort of one, like gas sort of eaters. We know something is changing, but up until then, OpenSea obviously is still there. So that just gives you the idea someone there is still aping hard on something that you're missing out, that you're going to feel FOMO later on. But yeah, I do strongly believe that this year is going to be about bringing utilities to metaverses and connecting them, and that's ultimately the entire ecosystem of like Move, like how do we connect and provide value to the users of those metaverses. So it's just that maybe the way is really I don't know if anybody has tried it. I don't know if someone is trying it right now. It's just that sort of this flood of information, and you can find something similar. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of more people that would resonate with this idea of what we're trying to do, like how we're trying to bang the metaverses. But to me, this is this is the utility that can help that scale, can help that flourish and bring. And then just like last thought, it's something like you guys remember when it's like in 2000s, maybe even earlier, it was like really, really cool to flex with your something like, I don't know, let's say like Centurion Amex card, because you have it, you're automatically cool, and it's like undeniable. Whoever sees it's like, okay, well that's it's a symbol of status, right? And then I was like,
you're automatically cool. You're automatically a douchebag. Fine, you might want to be a douchebag, and that's also fine.
Right. And it's always been something that you flex, right? But now something, things are becoming commodity. Obviously, you have a Ferrari, a Lambo. Your friend has the Lambo, but you have a picture of an ape. You have an NFT. Does your friend have it? Well, he doesn't, or she doesn't. So that automatically puts you, into this, flex position. I think that's part of the stickiness with NFTs, where something that resonates with you, like you actually like it, and gives you that opportunity to flex. So trying to make that banking sexy again. So it's like, oh, can you flex with your card again? Nobody cares about your Centurion Amex card anymore. It's not cool. I mean, if you have money, you have money. That's it. It doesn't matter how your card looks, just because of the variety of those things. It's a commodity. But in the NFT world and the utilities that you can bring with your card, now that's definitely the next thing out there.
Sven needs to speak. Let him speak.
Well, utility is a dangerous word, because and Waxbones was mentioning this too, and I see this. It's so apparent with art, and you were talking about music, and bringing utility to music that's been released as an NFT. What we're seeing still is NFT projects are trying to capture what they perceive to be desired, like, consumer needs, right? And right now, what is that? It's not that I need a new PFP. It's I need a PFP that's at a 10th floor, right? Or, okay, how are we going to get there? Well, you need good art, you need a good story, good team, good tech, and then let's promise some utility behind it. And let's build that. Okay, we deliver that. Well, people are now buying in at a 10th, 15th, 20th floor. What do they expect? They're not buying it just because of the social connection. You can do that for free. You don't have to pay, $60, $50, whatever $1,000 to get that connection. So there's an expectation that people have to deliver more beyond that. It's something that I think a lot of artists struggled with, is they've said, okay, you own my art. It's no longer just art. You're getting something. I'm going to continue, like the pressure people felt to continue delivering value. I mean, I have 2 projects. I feel this acutely. I never set out to, with some lofty roadmap and promising tons of utility, for my first project, Noobs, and the floor cratered. And I'd have people asking, well, what are you doing to fix this? And I said, well, why'd you buy it? Projects cannot anticipate what their consumers, their community will want, but I can tell you what they all want. is to see their portfolio go up in value. And so, when I think about like the next step, I'm hoping that there's more that comes out that starts to break this, let's call it the financialization of everything related to NFTs and this need to accumulate more and more and more. I personally would love my ape, even if it went, I don't want to see it go lower in value, but like I would enjoy it. But I bet you would not have Justin Bieber buying apes if they were at a 1 ETH, 2 ETH floor. It's cool because it's a flex, right? And that, I mean, this greed that is pervasive in NFT change in 2022, I don't know. But that is something that I think a lot about, and I know you guys do too.
Isn't it how all the blend goods sort of work? I mean, you would pay, put it this way, forget about the NFTs, right? But then there's a lot of people that would pay, enormous amount of money. I mean, Warren Buffett lunch, right? So now that apes have like all these celebrities, like you would pay money to get into that celebrity club. And that's social interaction. So it costs you money, but I mean, just like getting into an expensive restaurant, right? And booking, a table there would cost you money just to get into some social circle. So in a sense here, money is a proxy for you to achieve what you are trying to achieve, right? Which is, as you said earlier, which is like, recognition, which is connections. And it's an interesting kind of topic. I mean, would like Justin Bieber buy apes if it was like worthless? I don't know, right? But then the question is, would he buy it if there was such an hype? Yes, he would, right? No matter what the price is. So the question becomes back to like, is the price equivalent to, a ticket to those sort of like celebrities to come in? So that's more of around, what if apes, right? They had unlimited amount of, apes out there. Everybody could sort of mint a new one. Like, would the celebrities come into that project? Would they get to that point, right? So scarcity here is sort of like it just typical of a blind good. I mean, it's just that it happened to be an NFT, which is like a new cool thing. So it's a thing. But I hear you about the utilities. You do sort of max out yourself because there's never enough utility. You always need to deliver more. There's never enough, because when you deliver something, there's like, okay, well, what's next, right? And I totally get it. And that's why if you get into, the topic of like, well, I don't promise anything, then, you get into the game of like no expectation. But then I think my point here on the utility to things was more like you already have your ape, right? And your ape does something or it doesn't do something. But it's like, can you enable it to do something even without the bored apes sort of promising them you something, right? It's more of like, you have already something, and that something already naturally has a trade. I mean, that's the beauty of NFTs, right? If they're extendable, you could write your own contracts. Somebody could write now in a sort of like an fork where you could stake your apes, and in return you're going to get some sort of a new token. I mean, I don't know what for, right? But it gives you an idea that it's sort of extendable. And I'm pretty sure more things would happen in this way. Like, is this the utility that we've asked for? I don't know, but it is a utility in a certain way, right?
Well, apes, I mean, not to go on the path to apes, I mean, there's much more there about becoming, whether it's the Marvel or the Supreme of the Metaverse. I think there's more to it. But like, we're talking about something that's established luxury good, but it's not even a year old, and it could go away tomorrow. I mean, it really could, and we should acknowledge that. Now, will Web3 go away? Will the Metaverse go away? No. I don't believe that. But you mentioned scarcity, and this is, I guess, going back a little bit to see how do we give everything we're doing purpose. Scarcity provides value, but it's not a good, and it helps kind of bring attention. But scarcity is not what we should want in the Metaverse, right? We do not like a 10,000 person Metaverse sounds kind of shitty. A 100,000 person Metaverse sounds kind of shitty. It sounds like a cult more than a future society that I want to be a part of. So you have these projects that were built on exclusivity in a lot of ways, and what's next? Well, the good thing about gaming does not need the same type of scarcity. There's scarcity of certain attributes, within the gaming environment. but there is so much more opportunity for others to get involved. And that is what people are hoping for. You know, I don't want to bring this up because I know it's painful for a lot of people, but like we saw it play out this past week. People were betting big on Pixelmon, right? Without any idea what they were going to build, but it was just the idea. And then people got wrecked because they FOMO'd in at 3 ETH and it plummeted immediately. But like it shows what people want, right? I mean, the gaming is coming. It's coming in a big way. I hope people are smart about how they, you know, research and approach these new projects. But it's going to open up a different spigot than we've seen with PFPs.
Oh yeah, well, I think totally on point in terms of in terms of the game. Well, which is actually right the utility part here. No, I agree. I was actually thinking about the early example loot. I mean, what was the reason that it sort of it faded away? Was it the extendable loot? Was it because it killed the scarcity? Was it? I mean, they had an amazing community. It was like a lot of like attempts, right, to actually try to do something with loot. I mean, Treasury, right, which is an example of sort of like spin out stuff. But then was it the extendable loot that killed the idea? Because I mean, there you go, right? It's a ready.
No, it was a classic Gartner hype cycle, and it was just overextended, and it was amplified by the fact that a token was introduced, and that if you're first, everything is overexposed and overamplified anyway. What's interesting with Bored Apes, and I don't think they get enough credit for, is that Bored Apes should have disappeared. Should have gone away once that first initial hype cycle died, but it didn't. And the reason it didn't is because the people who are behind Bored Apes figured out how to keep it going and keep their community interested. But they also created the conditions under which a lot of the community did the heavy lifting with them, not for them, but with them. So they started exploring, well, can we make a coffee brand or a credit card, or can we do this? And because they were doing that, and they were doing it permissionlessly, that invited others. And you also have to remember that, like, when Bored Apes launched, there wasn't anything. There was a whole bunch of crypto art, and there was a whole bunch of people that were really pissed off and bored with it, but also had made a bunch of money and were like, okay, well, fuck it, let's give this a go. After that, everybody copied it. And so what you're seeing is just the same pattern, repeat and repeat, without any of that interest or excitement. And then what's happened is that what used to be the kind of pleb class that Bored Apes has now become the elite, and so they're entrenched in that position. It's not their fault. It's the natural evolution of human societies, just played out in a very short period of time, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. Bored Apes is a sensational success story because by any measure they should have died, and they haven't, and they probably will at some point, but like they don't. And the very fact that they haven't is the same thing that's kind of propping Bitcoin up. Is this Lindy effect? The longer it goes on, the less likely it is that Bored Apes will die. And so you just kind of have to accept this is reality. The projects that I really enjoy looking at are Artifact and Fluff World. I love Puck. Puck is just infuriating, but it's also fascinating. But the way Artifact is architecting what they're doing, it's just got me so excited. So listen, I'm going to leave a link when we've finally published this thing. And this is what's going on with monoliths. And there's a whole world of fun stuff here. If you can be assured of one thing with Artifact is they do know what they're doing. It is not Bored Apes where it's kind of like lightning in a bottle and you just see what happens. Like Artifact, they really know what they're doing. And whether you buy into that or not, that's on you. But like execution wise, but I don't think there's that many projects in this space that do it as well as they do. Sven, I don't know what your feeling is on this because you've seen as much of this as I do, but do you get the fizz from Artifact or are you a skeptic?
I wish I got in early. I've always liked the team, and you have to believe in the team more than anything, right? Not just what they're telling you. You have to really, it's a leap of faith. And I think a lot of people bet on teams without really knowing the teams, and that's where they get wrecked. You take that combined with obviously Nike and their track record, and there is no reason not to be optimistic about what they're building. What I like to say is, look, I don't know if they're going to endlessly go up in value, but if they don't, there's much bigger problems for a lot of other projects out there. So I'm a much bigger believer in what they're doing. And look, Yuga, they were lightning in a bottle, but they've grown, and that's the impressive part. The team was, and we said this last time, they weren't anticipating success. Artifact, Bazuki, they were anticipating success. But despite not anticipating success, they've adapted at Yuga, and they built a great team around them. They've handled what's gone on the past few weeks admirably. And so, they're in the same mode now where I am very bullish on that team. And you see other teams out there that you can have that same feeling for. But, Artifact, if you believe in NFTs and you don't believe in what they're building, there's some dissonance, that's going on there, because, it's really impressive. And it's really impressive how quickly they're executing on this. This monoliths were not some whimsical idea. Okay, well, we got to deliver something next. This was clearly planned. This was planned before the Nike deal. The Nike deal also didn't come out, that day. It didn't happen overnight. How long was that happening, behind the scenes before it came to reality? So, I sense your excitement. My excitement, of course, is lower because I just don't have exposure.
I know,
but I can appreciate it. I can appreciate it.
And when we've also talked about fluffs, ASMs, and the ecosystem that those crazy Kiwis are building. I mean, I'm so excited about it because I don't know what they're up to, but I also know that there's like all these different pieces. It's AI, it's DeFi, and it's also 3D, it's Metaverse, and it's got that Kiwi energy to it. It's a little bit kind of like, it's raw and weird, and I love that. I am going to just flag one project that's coming up. I have him here. This is my Aku. I love this thing so much. Michael Johnson and the Akuverse. Let me just bring up the Akuverse. So Akutars are coming, and if you own one of the chapters of the Aku story, I think that's probably a good thing to have. This is like coming in 2 months or so, but like Michael Johnson, former baseball player, just a lovely human being, and a lovely story around what he's creating. And I just love the entire universe around this. It just feels like a really good iteration on what NFTs are good at. And I'm excited to see where they go next with it, because I think this is going to be really inspirational for a bunch of people who have no connection to this space at the moment whatsoever. And I'm excited for that.
It is one of the projects that is going to help advance the mainstreaming of NFTs, because where Micah is aiming is so much higher than just releasing NFTs. I mean, like, he's made tremendous money off of it, and that's wonderful, but he didn't need it. He doesn't need it now. I think he is really ambitious. He's built a great team around him, and the brand and the long-term development of that IP. I mean, it will be the first, I don't know if it'll be the first. It will be one of the first NFT IP projects to hit, whether it's Netflix or theaters, right? And just building so much. Like, this is the birth of a new type. It's not Star Wars or Marvel, but it's the birth of something new, and that's exciting. And I'm excited to get Chapter 10 and be a moon god, as I know you are. But yeah, that's definitely one of the projects that I'm very excited to see unfold.
It's the one project I don't feel dirty telling people about, and it's rare that you have that. I mean, to be totally honest, it feels good having the statuette. It feels good, kind of. I've talked to him briefly on Discord, and like, I've done these massive essay films about Bored Apes, about Meebits, and Puck. The next one has to be Michael Johnson and the Akuverse. Has to be, because it's there's so much substance here, and I think if we can elevate that stuff and show people a path towards something like that that's meaningful and inspirational, I think that's the best of what we have in front of us.
Completely agreed, and he's opening up Web3 to people that maybe aren't being invited in other places too, which I don't think we can underestimate. The effect of that long term. He's just a special person, and it's a special project. And look, it's not the only special project out there. There are others. So if you don't hear your project talked about, don't feel bad, right? But it like, there are templates that should be emulated, and some things that can't be emulated. But that is one I would strive to, if I were building something new, to replicate. It's just how they've gone about it, what their goals are. Justin Bieber, I wish him well.
So, listen, it's time for us to wrap this up. Waxbones, do you have any final thoughts to share with us now that you've heard this 2 hours of insanity?
No, I think it's interesting, all these projects that you guys are bringing up. It sort of harkens back to a previous conversation we were having about money. And actually, if those initial 10K projects hadn't sold out, they wouldn't have had the capital to then build the next thing and the next thing and the next and the next thing. Yeah, so I guess it all does come down to money. Sven was right.
Well, that's not a very nice note to end on. Anton, lift us up. Bring it back.
Weird to say it, but NFTs is the last mile, solution, for the Web3. It's not the DeFi. It's not the unique tech about, let's say, something really, really cool like ZK Snarks or something else. I mean, something that your future Web3 project will be based on. But the NFTs, that social connection, is ultimately that, last mile connectivity thing that's going to solve it, and we're all going to make it. That's the beautiful part of it. So it doesn't matter if it's dick butts, right, or small brains or apes or anything else, right? It's just that, put it this way, right? So many different attempts connect to and resonate to so many different people, and then that's something that will lead basically to like really, really massive adoption. We saw it in 2021, like last year, more than ever, right? So I mean, more than any in any year previously, the amount of people that we've onboarded right into this space, the amount of talent that was sort of created and forged, but it's only going to accelerate from here. So coming and speaking from the DeFi, from the really, like I would say, cool stuff out there, I do think that NFTs is what we've been looking for to, to all gonna make it or kind of stuff. So that's it.
It's onboarding lubricant. Just
yes,
it's ultra glide for normal humans. Vector, final thoughts from you?
I just have a question for Waxbones, actually.
Yeah, take it offline. DMs.
Oh
no, go for it, man. Go for it.
It's nothing rude. I just want to know if you've read all those books in the background.
I reckon about 5 of those books are mine. The rest are my partner's. She's a maniac.
Oh, it makes you look really clever though with it in the background. So well done.
Yeah, I know. That's why I angle my camera this way.
Good work.
Yeah, I'm just rocking like a film noir Venetian blinds background, even though it's like dark outside, because I'm like, well, cool. Listen, I don't know if you've enjoyed having my VTuber parallax weird whatever the fuck this thing is, but like for anyone who's interested in this is there's free software. Go to the beginning of the stream. It's very, very easy to set up if you want to start VTubing as an avatar. I suspect we're going to be able to do this with any PFP project within the next 12 months. So it's going to be as simple as just plug it in, go, and then you're off to the races. And it literally took me like half an hour to set this up. It was the easiest thing ever compared to the Unreal Engine crap that we were doing last week. This is like so simple. So if anyone's interested in that, let me know, and I will endeavor to peel back the lid on all of this stuff more, because this idea of dual identity, digital identity, where it's going, where the value resides, the metaverse, it's all internal, and externally, it's time to end the show. Thank you so much to Sven, to Waxbones, to Anton, and to Vector Meldrew for joining us. I'll see you on the next one. Get subscribed. I mean, whatever, YouTube stuff. Goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah, that's the end of the broadcast.